Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Planet Therapy. Remember, this is a space where we have casual conversations to do with essentials with self love, work life balance, and also belonging. Today, you might notice I'm wearing my Planet Essentials t shirt. You can find that on the website where it's My Planet Essentials. Just flagging that up, by the way. And yeah, today, I feel like we're going to just talk about actually accepting that it's okay to outgrow people. It's okay to outgrow situations and just things, especially when you're on your own path to growth. And I guess why I think that's a prominent subject is because from young, I know I was the type of person where it's like, I just always wanted to hold on to people because I feel like once I make a strong bond or strong connection with someone, I feel like, or even like a job, I feel like I was just attached and I didn't really want it to end. And it kind of, I remember just like reviewing that and reflecting about it. And I realized that I was in so many different environments that I just had no business being in for that period of time. Because I feel like when you look back at certain things, I feel like everything has a season. And I feel like I hear that so many times, but it's true. Everything has a season. But sometimes you're not always going to have the same school friends that you grew up with because they're your season, especially when it comes to you within the similar environments. So you kind of just bonded over seeing them so many times throughout the week. But then when you kind of then remove school from that context, it's like, oh, okay, so you might not actually have the same things to bond over anymore. You might be on different wavelengths, different pathways in life. And it's like learning to be okay with that. And when you kind of accept that sort of situation as that's seemingly quite normal, when we go into adult sort of, let's say, friendships or relationships or work situations, I feel like it's just so much easier to stay in a toxic situation because that's something that you know. And we see that especially when you look at, let's say, toxic workplaces. You might be at a workplace for, let's say, 2, 3 years, but because you're just comfortable, you'll just remain. Like, you might have plans to want to be an engineer or plans to have your own business. And you might tell yourself, yes, you're going to do it, and you do small steps every month, but purely because taking that step of outside your comfort zone sometimes is very scary and it's very different and it can be very alienating. It doesn't look attractive. So it's just like, why would you go and do that when you're already comfortable in an environment that you already are familiar with? You know the people around you. Sometimes people stay in relationships that don't serve them anymore because there's a saying, it's better to be with the devil that you know rather than the devil you don't know. And all those things seem a bit more attractive than kind of stepping out of something that's like out of your own bubble because you remove that safety net. When you leave that job, you don't actually have a safety net anymore and you're kind of forced to kind of just like be in the deep end and kind of find your way through it. And that's not always easy. So what this message is more trying to tell you, or trying to even tell myself, is that if we want to kind of have better things for ourselves, whether that would be we're on a journey of self-love, we're on a journey of self-discovery, or you want to build in your career and you want to reach certain milestones, or if you want to be in a positive and healthy relationship, whether that would be romantic or friendships or even with family dynamics, then change and outgrowing these sort of environments that we used to be in might have to happen, especially if you're around people or environments where it doesn't facilitate your growth. And I feel like sometimes we know this, but it's like it's accepting that that is true and that's fact is the problem and difficulty here. I think when I look back on past friendships or past relationships, I realized that sometimes I stayed there longer because I was just like, well, I can maybe try and grow whilst also having some of these relationships around me. And when I tried that, yes, I would kind of grow small a little bit, but like, oh, okay, I'm still can balance the two. I didn't realize that it was still like mentally I wasn't putting myself in an environment that could project me further than I needed to be, because I was around, let's say, I was in an environment that didn't nurture that soil for me. I kind of sometimes was like, I fell into self-doubt, or I might fall into, well, around me, they not do it, then that's not their focus, so why should it be mine sometimes? Or it's like there's no one to really hold me accountable on some like projects or plans that I have for myself, because they're not in an environment that they have that mental capacity to accept that or even meet me there, if that makes sense. And I feel like that's just so normal. So there's also other sayings where it's just like, when I've done research, I realized that, oh, you shouldn't be in a room where you feel like you're the smartest in that room, because at the same time, what do you have to aspire and look forward to when it's like you've put yourself at a cap, or you put yourself at the highest of that peak and there's nowhere else to go? Do you know what I mean? And I think that even just falls in line with when I look at sometimes adults today, there's just so many situations where I realize that people don't actually want to grow up. Like, they don't want to accept that life actually moves on. And sometimes we have to want better for ourselves to kind of get out of a situation, instead of just sitting there complaining about something and not actually having the action to do it. Because sometimes when you just wait around for change or growth or anything like that, you're just going to keep waiting because you don't want to put that action to step out of something that's unknowing to you. And you kind of then hold yourself back. But then sometimes you actually might experience something called emotional dissonance. And psychology describes that as a feeling when you're around family, or you're in an environment, and you feel like this is an environment that you've been in for so long, you're familiar, but you start to feel like you don't align with your environment anymore, and you start to feel uncomfortable. And I've been in that with jobs where it's like, because I know what I'm doing, I feel like I should be happier than I actually am. And sometimes when you then just stay in that environment, it's like you start to question, why am I so uncomfortable? And then when you really do that deeper knowledge or deeper work, you kind of realize, oh, because I'm staying here and I'm not going to where I want to be, then you realize that you're actually starting to like resent the environment that you're in, because it's like you see somewhere where you're meant to be, but it's like there's nothing helping push you to get there. And listen to that voice, because sometimes you actually have to question it. It's like, okay, if you present to, let's say, your work colleagues or your manager that, okay, I want to be a director of marketing in the next year or so, but you've been in that company, let's say 5-6 years, and you show no growth to even be a manager, then sense would tell you that maybe that's not the environment you're meant to be in to go on track with that development that you want. When you kind of listen to that voice, you kind of realize that, oh, you know what? Cool. You're going to start taking responsibility for what you want so you can get there. It's like, okay, if I want to be this person where it's like, okay, for example, when I took on my own journey and stuff like that, I realized that I got to a point where I didn't actually start to like myself. I started to get very uncomfortable with sometimes the way I dressed. I started to get uncomfortable with just my mindset, in terms of where I felt like I was a bit stunted with certain things. I didn't have much life experience that I would love to gain. So then I started taking myself to, let's say, networking events or creative events to kind of just broaden my scope and broaden my knowledge of things that was beyond me. And I gained so much, and I went by myself, by the way, because I just felt like I didn't really have friends or people that I felt like would be interested in those environments. But I was like, you know what, Marcus, if I want to grow into be a person where I work on self-love, or I want to go to these places and grow within myself, I'm going to have to take that step of being uncomfortable just to put myself somewhere where I feel like I can grow and develop as a person. And when I did that, it was life-changing, because for me, I was like, oh, I actually can do these things by myself, and I can meet people that I feel like I'm lower in the room, but it's like there's so much different potentials of exploration for me to do and grow into that I didn't have an idea was possible. And when I started doing that, I realized like, oh, okay. And then I just felt like everything started changing. It felt like my friendships were changing. It felt like my relationship dynamics were changing. It felt like even my bonds with, let's say, family or stuff like that was changing, because I felt like I wanted to grow to be a certain person, especially when it comes to like mental health and talking about self-love and learning a lot more about myself. And I wanted to be in positions where I felt like I was comfortable and feel like, okay, great, I'm around people that are a bit more like-minded or a bit more like understand me more. And I feel like when I started taking charge of that, I don't know, I just felt so much more confident in myself and what I could do. And it just felt like, sounds so cliche, but it actually did feel like the sky was my limit in terms of what I could do. And when you kind of move within that, you feel so much more peace when it's like, okay, great. I'm trusting myself that this is a journey. I have no idea where it's going to end. And I have to be comfortable with knowing that people or jobs or just whatever may have to shed and leave behind, because they might not be what my new season's going into, you know? And it's not like letting go isn't a weakness. It's something where it's like when you learn to accept that, it then gets replaced with something where it's like hope, and also replaces with something where it's like, okay, I can actually do this. And it's like you start to then be more comfortable. You start to become more comfortable with change and more comfortable with the idea of growth. And you start to like what you look like in the mirror, but instead of like shying away from discomfort and kind of then just being stunted. So yeah, it's just a message to kind of let you know and just think about, what are you holding on to for so long that you feel like you can't live without? Because when you identify what that is and you learn to kind of ask yourself those hard questions, why can't I live without this? Da, 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 da. And you actually take that step to be like, I'm going to let that go, or leave this job, leave this environment, move out, or etc. You then put yourself in a position where you're just open to everything and different possibilities. And I'm not saying that's easy, because it is scary. It's scary. It has its hard moments, especially where sometimes you then do miss the familiarity of, like, let's say your past friends or past relationships. That's why there's been so many times where people would go back to, let's say, exes, or go back to old workplaces, or go back to past friendships and stuff like that, because they missed that safety blanket. But that's also your testing period. It's the way it's like, okay, because even if you do go back, you kind of then after a while see why you left that situation in the first place. And sometimes you might even need that lesson, because then you can realize, like, oh, okay, great. There was a reason why it didn't serve me. And just accept that. It's like, okay, great. I don't know where this journey is going. And even if you need to journal, because for me, that really helped me. I learned how to sit down, write out what I'm thinking and feeling, and acknowledge that, okay, this is a hard season of my life at the moment. And it sometimes feels alienating and lonely. But when you look at the end goal of what possibilities it ends, it's like you start then just feeling like, okay, there's so much I can do. There's so much I can grow and learn from this. And it could be exciting. And I feel like when I chose those sort of like decisions for myself, I couldn't tell you what I was going to end up here, let's say months or years later, like doing a podcast, having my business and everything like that, and still working as a data engineer. And everything just feels like it fell into a place where it was meant to be, purely from some small actions of me just deciding that, okay, I want better for myself, or I'm going to put myself in somewhere where I feel uncomfortable, because you never know who you're going to meet. You never know where you're just going to be. And it's like, that's something that you always got to tell yourself. The amount of different friends I have now, where I just feel like I've just propelled myself from somewhere that isn't so anxious or isn't so insecure and everything like that. It's been so enlightening to me, where I actually like myself a lot more. So yeah, I guess that's just a point just to share with you. It's just like, you know, you never know where we're going to end up. And change is hard. Change is very uncomfortable. And sometimes you're always going to be tempted to kind of just slide back into old habits. But learn how to make those new changes or those new habits attractive. And that's something you actively got to do, because even going to the gym, it is not easy. It is not something that you willingly always want to do. But when you remind yourself that, okay, the reasons why you're doing it and you're making small progress, it's not by like saying you're going to go to the gym and go 5 times a week and then get burnt out, because for some people that might work. But for me, I start off small. Like even I don't even go to the gym and work out from home. So I do like push-ups, sit-ups, squats. And I remember just like each week, let's say said like 3 days a week, I'm going to do, let's say 3 sets of 20 push-ups, etc., etc. Just slowly go across that, because I wanted to be just helping my body mentally and also physically. Now I'm doing like 3 sets of 100 push-ups and like squats and everything like that. And it feels like that's normal. And it's just become a routine, because I wanted to be someone that was fit. I wanted to be someone that paid attention to health across all areas, mentally and physically. And when you associate like an identity towards what you want to be, it kind of makes it a bit more rewarding or a bit more attractive or a bit more like, it gives yourself more reason to want to be in that change and grow more. And it's a lot more of an attractive resolution to stay in somewhere where you're stunted and you're not completely happy because you're not reaching your goals. So again, learn to make something feel like make discomfort attractive and something that you want to go into, no matter how way you do it. Whether it's like you associate it with, okay, like even working out, for example, I know that I get uncomfortable at the gym, so I'm going to work out from home because it's comfortable and it's also something I can do whilst I'm working. So that's attractive to me. But I'm also doing it away from the bedroom, and I give myself a timestamp of when I do it. So I do it when I'm on lunch, when I'm working from home. And it's just associating context with it. And it's like figuring out ways that kind of makes things like, okay, this is going to be new, but what can I associate it with it to kind of make sure I do it? And it's something that keeps me feeling happy and more peaceful and knowing that I will want to be better, because it's not easy. But yeah, I guess it also just helps you also misalign guilt, because sometimes you do feel guilty sometimes, where it's just like, okay, I am not who I used to be, or I'm not around the people I used to be with, etc., etc. And there's a lot of extraneous circumstances that could happen. But when you kind of accept that change happens and seasons change and things are going to be beyond your control, you kind of then associate it with alignment. And it's like, okay, because this is now different or is like alien to you, it is not the end of the world. And it will just align your purpose elsewhere. And if it aligns you back to certain people when it feels like, okay, they're in better places of change and growth and development, perfect. If not, perfect. It's just knowing that throughout these stages of growth, you can accept it for what it is, and make sure that you continuously put in effort to put your needs first, especially your goals first, and also something that you know you want to identify yourself as, if that makes sense. See, essential work in progress. That's what we are. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any thoughts or anything you want to share, honestly, feel free to reach out. Again, you can find us on YouTube, you can find us on Spotify, Planet Therapy, and remember to visit the website My Planet Essentials for more. And yeah, so make sure you take care, stay blessed, and peace.